Hello, I'm Paul Gates. Welcome to this week's episode of The Academics. Joining me today are our regular panelists, Professor Heather Page Preston and Dr. Dave Spiceland. Today's first topic deals with free speech, something we've been talking about quite a bit lately, and the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. What's happened is over the summer, the university worked on getting the university's status raised on the fire scale from orange light, yellow light, to green light. And in that, we join only about 35 other universities in the country that have that. Most are in the yellow light or even the red light categories. And moving up, I've always found this interesting, is the bulk of those 35 universities are in North Carolina.
Yeah, I saw that.
And a lot of them, of the North Carolina ones, are public universities like Appalachian. So we're in that kind of company. I guess that's good company. Mm-hmm. So what's our take on what this means for us and how we got there?
Well, as I understand it, we got there because we streamlined some policies, clarified some things, shortened some things, made them much clearer than they were before. And that's what got us the green light. What it means for us at the university, I think it means what all of us always thought it meant in the first place, that this is a place for an exchange of ideas. It's to make it easier for us and students to do that within reason. I mean, you can't just march into a classroom and start proselytizing, but you need to have spaces where you can talk about things that challenge you.
Yeah, let's talk about that, where this exchange of ideas takes place for a minute. There's a lot of talk, both on campus and elsewhere, and I think this has been remedied, about free speech zones. And that was one of the things that we had that got us yellow lighted. Mm-hmm. And it's my understanding, and I think you've looked into this most recently, Heather, that's been eliminated. Is that right?
I don't know that it's been eliminated completely. That I could not find. I know that there are still areas like Durham Park, Duck Pond Field, sorry, and Sanford Mall, which are designated as kind of the open areas. There are other places off campus, obviously, which have nothing to do, that students can go to and anyone can go to. But there are still some regulations about where people can meet, crowd size, all of that. And I would assume that revolves around the legitimate, you can't interrupt a classroom, safety issues, fire hazards, things like that.
Well, then we're talking about indoor spaces, yes, largely there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's always been a given, that the fire marshal's always going to be interested in how many people you've packed into a room.
Absolutely.
But as far as outdoor spaces,
well, look at how well this worked in Missouri, whichever way you want to put it, where the famous video of the guy who worked for the paper, and he came up, wanted to do some interviewing, and she said, "No, you can't be here." And all this is on video. And apparently Missouri has suffered for this in terms of their enrollment. Their enrollment is down. Mm-hmm. Is there a correlation? Who knows? But this idea of safe zones, anywhere ought to be a safe zone in terms of communicating. We don't wear horns. We're all faculty members. We disagree about a lot of things, but we still like each other. At least I think we do. So, what's the problem where people can't communicate, particularly students? They should feel welcome, whether in the classroom or outside somewhere. And if not, there's a problem.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. In fact, I'm always telling people this is, particularly in the mass media class, where we confront all sorts of societal ideas and where people stand on those, that it is a safe zone. You have the right to discuss this, but discussion is the key.
Well, and I put in my syllabus,
within a context.
Well, you can disagree, but don't be disagreeable.
Hey,
I think
that's nice. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're talking about a classroom setting now where everybody's a member of the class, and of course, that's the whole purpose of the universities, is to have that kind of exchange of ideas. But there's not really, or at least it's not getting any coverage, a problem with incivility and so forth in class that I'm aware of. It's mostly we're talking about outside speakers who are invited by some student club, and the concerns about, okay, safety, of course,
Yeah.
always a concern. You know,
Well-
the fact that, you know, Berkeley spent $800,000 in security on that last Free Speech Week
Yes.
event that didn't happen.
Yeah.
There's some thought that that was maybe a put-up job,
Yeah.
that was planned that way all along. But there are those other considerations, and the off-campus types.
Yeah.
Of course, that's part of an exchange of ideas,
It
too.
is,
It's not
yeah.
just people who are here all the time.
I mean, we regularly bring people from off
Well,
campus
sure.
to talk.
And we should.
Yeah, my concern is if, particularly where our building is located, there's a green area outside of it. If someone comes and is standing there with a bullhorn while I'm trying to conduct class, that becomes an issue for me. I don't think you have the right to do that. You interrupt the mission of the university. when
No,
you do
that gets into a time, place, and manner problem.
Is
and
it any
particularly,
different
Yes.
than when I'm teaching in the classroom that I teach in, and there's the clunk, 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 clunk of the candy and that kind
Oh,
of
the
thing?
vending
People
machine?
talking outside.
Yeah.
I don't know who
Well,
thought to put it
that
there.
irritates me too.
Oh, yeah.
close the door, Dave.
I try to, but then it gets rather stuffy, and you can't open the windows. And I'm not complaining. It's a wonderful building. So.
Well, you know, I guess that's just a design problem or a indoor space design issue.
It was funny
But-
though, last week I was teaching a class and there was somebody outside yapping away, and I don't know who you are, and so I kind of looked toward the door, and then somebody outside slammed the door as if we were interfering with their communication, and I thought that's what we're here for, is in the classroom. So I don't know. It was interesting.
Well, you know, I think those incidental interruptions, you know, we just got to live with. But you know, bullhorns outside in the green space, I mean, that's a classic example. I use that in class as an example of a manner problem that can be stopped. I mean, it's the bullhorn that's the problem. It's not the speech.
That's right.
But that's a.
But back up a little bit. Who is this fire organization? Because I'm not. I did run off something from their organization. Are they one side of the political spectrum, or what?
Not-
And why should we care?
Not really. It's the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. They are not partisan. They have a slight libertarian leaning, I've observed over the years. But they're not wholeheartedly one way or the other. And they're a very high-profile group as far as, you know, keeping an eye on this kind of thing. I mean, this traffic light system that they have is kind of a neat gimmick to promote promote free speech, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not sure how they're supported. Were you able to find anything on that, Dave?
No, I
Yeah, I
couldn't
couldn't
find
either.
anything.
I couldn't
But
either.
those in the red light district, so to speak, I mean, do they really care that they are in that particular category?
I think it's probably safe to say that a lot of them don't care.
Yeah.
It's just like being on the AAUP censor list, you know. There are universities that have been on that for 40 years, and a lot of them just, you know,
Well, I guess
just
you
live
know,
with it.
it depends on whether or not you're involved in a current lawsuit, and then you might care a little bit more.
well, that's true. If the ACLU is on you
Yeah.
for a free speech problem,
Yeah.
that may impact your view of your traffic light status.
Yeah.
And there is something, I remember when I was an undergraduate student and I took a persuasion class, and I thought there was one way to persuade. You know, I was rather naive, and, you know, here's what you do. And, you know, persuasion is a very complex issue between different people and different contexts. And we look at people as the same, that, okay, here's a group, and I'm thinking of students in this case, but there's some people that will sit there. There are some students, I don't know what they sound like because they don't say anything. And then there are some students, I know exactly what they sound like because they're talking all the time, and usually things that are very germane to what the class is. So people are different in terms of their expression. So what do we do in terms of, and I care, and I think we all care, are they really absorbing this, getting this? Do they care about the material? And what happens 10, 20, 30 years down the road? Where will their views change at all? Because most persuasion, in my opinion, is very, very slight. And it's not something where all of a sudden you wake up and say, well, you know, yesterday I was a Republican and now I'm a Democrat. It just doesn't happen that way. Oh, come on, agree with me.
I do agree with that, Dave. I'm thinking that, sure, these kinds of beliefs are not the kind of thing that changes overnight for any reason.
Right.
It's not the fault of persuasion, not doing its job, I don't think, either. It's just that something that has been firmly held in mind for a long period of time is that much harder to use suasion to overcome it. I think that's sure.
Especially now in this media climate where it's such a fragmented delivery system of information. And you get your echo chamber, so you don't have to confront anything. You don't have to challenge yourself. You can just have your own beliefs fed back to you 24/7.
Yeah, the selective exposure.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
uses and gratification theories.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
why do we use the media? Yeah.
Yeah, that all was established, back in the 40s, but I think it's even more so now. I mean, we're seeing it manifest more so in recent years.
And the power of media to control that message when you've had such a consolidation of media ownership and something just like Facebook, which has the power of a country when it comes to communication, and especially in third world countries where it's providing quote unquote free access to the internet and having economic impact. It has more power than the actual government in some places. That's a scary thought.
That could be good, though.
Well, it might be,
Knowing some
or it's very
Well,
scary.
some governments you might want to do something differently. That's right. That's right. Maybe we ought to move on to our next topic, which is kind of related, I suppose. It's a speech issue, and that's the take a knee protests, or sitting down during the national anthem. It's been done in a number of ways. What do we make of that? I mean, of course, it started with the NFL. Has apparently trickled down to a few colleges. Not a lot, as best I can tell. But
And also high school.
what's this
yeah.
about? Oh yeah, a couple of high schools.
Yeah, well, I did a little looking into the college level. And like you, I couldn't find it in a whole lot of places in college or at the college level. What interested me was, the perspectives. What perspective does the university take? What perspective does the coaching staff take, or the athletic director? And it's interesting when you do look into it. The coaches, when they speak to the reporters, are saying, well, basically, I'm just a football coach and I don't know a whole lot about all this other stuff going on, especially when it's game time. That's what I'm concentrating on. But I think everybody has the right to do what they want to. Now, what they're saying in locker room, I have no idea. My perspective from maybe a university administrative point of view, or at least the PR person, would be they're students. They're student athletes. If we protect demonstration and free speech on campus, a football field is, by extension, part of the campus. It's university property. So therefore, if they want to take a knee, they take a knee.
Let's go back to the NFL, though. From what I understand, in the rule book, if there is a rule, I understand there is a rule book. It says that you will stand, you will put your hand over your heart, you'll hold your helmet in your left hand. That's what they're supposed to do. I mean, if they beat up their wives or girlfriends, there's rules about that too, and they're pretty strict about enforcing that. So do they have the right to do these things if they're told, and they're being paid to do this, okay, in terms of being in the NFL?
Well, yeah, I think that's a little bit different, I would argue, Dave. That's an employer-employee relationship, and you're there by contract, and that's your only job, is to fulfill the terms of the contract, which doesn't include protest or expression or anything like that. I mean, I think we're kind of unique in that regard, that we can do that sort of thing. We're supposed to. It's part of the job.
Now we teachers, or we
professors?
Okay.
Yeah, I think faculty.
Faculty types.
Yeah.
Right. Not the royal we.
Oh, okay.
But that's part of engaging students and engaging issues, public participation, which we of course are encouraging on all fronts. But so the NFL is definitely different, but still, you still have the right to express yourself. Now, if the ownership doesn't like that, that's where it's different, I think. I mean, you can be gone like Colin Kaepernick, but you can't do that with a student. They're
No.
still a student.
No. And you know, students do have something to lose because punishment can come from a number of different angles, whether that's losing your scholarship or, you know, all of a sudden there's not enough funds to re-up your scholarship. So things like that could happen, but I would like to think they would not. I would like to
In
think that
terms of
every university,
retribution, you
yes,
mean, or-
I
yeah.
would think that I would like to think that every university would say, no, we back our students' right to be who they are, and yes, they're wearing a uniform, but they're representing us just like any college student would represent us.
Well, I came out of a rhetorical theory background, going back to the ancient of days when I was a student. And you know, we looked at, and particularly my theory of what communication is a receiver orientation, that it's not so much what I say, it's what you think I said, that determines the effect and the worthiness, if you will, of communication. So I guess my question is, what does this mean? And I hate to use the term meaning that way, because meaning is not in the words, meaning is in people. So when people kneel, what's going on there? What are they protesting? What are they trying to make a statement about? And I don't know if that's being lost in all this. It's become a very complex issue.
You know, I don't think it's being lost. I think that it's not being heard. I think that people aren't listening. I think it's been pretty clear, at least starting with Colin Kaepernick, that this is not a protest about the flag or the national anthem. It's actually showing the utmost respect in terms that he believes the country should be equal for all people, and it's not, particularly people of color.
Well,
and
that's his
it's
opinion.
tied to that. Well, there's a lot of evidence to show that the law isn't applied equally,
Well,
and it has to do with the killings of black men in particular
Well,
by
certainly,
police.
the
So,
people who are doing the protesting, the kneeling or sitting or whatever it is, that is their motivation. Now, how it's interpreted by, you know, that's where
yeah.
we have some controversy. If it happens to be during the anthem, does that make it a protest of the anthem? If it's during the anthem, how does that make it a protest against the military? I think that's a little bit of a leap that I don't quite see.
And I also think I shared with you all last week or the week before that I didn't know this until recently. The Department of Defense paid the NFL many millions of dollars to have athletes come out during the national anthem and do the little dog and pony show.
Well, the federal government's paid a lot of money for stadiums and those kinds of things. That's been an issue.
Taxpayers have paid a lot for that
Yep.
too. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know about federal
Yeah,
money,
federal
but,
has it's normally the
but
municipality.
City
yeah.
money, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, bond issues you know,
Yep.
that are floated by a state or a city.
Yeah, so if we're going to talk about being genuine, let's start with perhaps that most disingenuous aspect of coming out at all and being paid to do it, right? And it's something that the government is said, okay, we'll give you a lot of money if you get your players out on the field.
And now where is this again? I'm not familiar
Oh,
with
the
this.
Department of Defense. They're McCain, and I cannot remember the other senator who co-authored or co-sponsored a study. They couldn't track a number of millions that the Department of Defense had spent. Turns out they'd given it to the NFL
I'm
for this
shocked.
show of patriotism.
Shocked that they would waste money.
And of course, you know, there's talk too about the why it's focused on sports. Of course, in the NFL, about 75% of the NFL players are black. The similar percentage, I think, in the NBA. And of course, they're not playing now, are they?
Can't keep the season straight.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
can't either.
Yeah,
But
there's too much overlap.
I'm saying they're not playing, so we don't know how they would react. Except
Yeah.
some of them talked a little bit about
Yeah.
what they would do, but I don't think anybody's really come out to talking about it the way they have in the NFL and college sports too. Well, we're close to our time, so Heather.
All right, well, thanks for all of that, Paul. To close the show this week, Dr. Paul Gates will be giving us a fun fact about the history of the high country. Take it away.
Well, I'm not sure this is exactly history, but it's something that's always been interesting to me, is that the population of Watauga County is evenly split among the university, town of Boone, and the rest of the county. And each of these have grown at the same rate over the last 22 years. In 1995, when I came to Boone, that's why I picked 1995, each had a population of 13,000. In 2017, each has a population of 18,000. Now, I'm not going to predict where we go from here. It seems like, I don't know, we're going to increase that number slowly and steadily. Judging by the traffic, I think that probably is happening.
Oh, it most definitely is happening. Most definitely is happening. All right, thanks.
But to our students back there in the other room, this is history. So.
Yes, 1995. That's a different century.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah.
right. That's right.
All right. Well, thanks. That's our time for today. I'm Professor Heather Page Preston. We hope you'll join us next time on The Academics.